I remember the night Dean Walters told me everything. We were sitting at a luxury rooftop restaurant in Singapore, the city lights sprawling beneath us like scattered diamonds, and he looked like a man who had crawled out of his own grave. His hands trembled as he lifted his whiskey glass, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who had seen the darkest corners of human nature. What he told me that night was not just a story of betrayal or deception. It was a descent into a carefully orchestrated nightmare that nearly destroyed him completely. And the most terrifying part? It could happen to anyone. Before we go further, I want you to do something for me. If you have ever wondered how seemingly intelligent, successful people fall into traps that seem obvious from the outside, if you have ever thought you could never be fooled, then subscribe to this channel right now, because Dean thought the same thing.
And you are about to discover why that confidence nearly cost him everything. Dean Walters was 57 years old when this happened. A successful commercial real estate broker from Vancouver, he had spent 3 decades building a respectable career, raising 2 kids who are now adults with their own lives, and surviving a divorce that had left him emotionally hollowed out, but financially stable. His ex-wife had remarried within a year. His daughter barely called. His son was busy with his own family in Toronto. Dean found himself in that peculiar kind of loneliness that successful middle-aged men often experience. A quiet desperation, masked by comfortable routines and the occasional business dinner. He was not looking for love, he told me. He was not even looking for companionship. He was just tired of the emptiness that greeted him every evening in his downtown condo. So when his business partner suggested a 2-week trip to Thailand to explore some potential investment opportunities and decompress, Dean agreed without much thought. He had never been to Southeast Asia. The idea of warm weather, exotic food, and a complete change of scenery appealed to him. He wanted to be somewhere nobody knew his name, where he could walk through crowded streets and feel simultaneously lost and free. He wanted to escape the ghost of his former life, even if just for a little while. Bangkok hit him like a sensory explosion. The heat, the noise, the smell of street food mixing with incense and exhaust fumes. Dean checked into a high-end hotel in Sukhumvit, spent his first few days in air-conditioned comfort attending meetings that went nowhere, and then decided to actually explore the city. He wandered through night markets, ate pad thai from street vendors, visited temples where golden Buddhas gleamed in the afternoon sun. And it was during one of these aimless wanderings at a riverside park near Asiatique that he first saw her. Her name was Benjamas, though she told him to call her Beam, and she was everything Dean had not realized he was looking for. Mid-30s, with long black hair pulled into a casual ponytail, wearing a vintage band t-shirt, and carrying a professional camera around her neck. She was photographing the sunset over the Chao Phraya River, completely absorbed in her work, adjusting angles and settings with the focused intensity of someone who truly loved what they did. Dean watched her for a moment, captivated not by attraction in the conventional sense, but by her energy, her apparent passion for capturing beauty in a chaotic city. He almost walked away, but something made him approach. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way the golden light caught her profile and made her look like she belonged in one of those photographs herself. He complimented her camera. It was an expensive Nikon, and Dean knew just enough about photography from his daughter's brief college interest to make relevant conversation. Benjamas turned to him with a smile that felt genuine, unguarded. Her English was excellent, touched with a British accent from years studying in London, she explained. They talked for 20 minutes, then an hour. Then she suggested grabbing dinner at a nearby restaurant she knew. Dean said yes, without hesitation. That first dinner became drinks. Drinks became a walk through the illuminated streets. Benjamus told him about her work as a freelance photographer, how she had built a modest following on social media by capturing the authentic soul of Bangkok. The hidden temples, the elderly vendors, the moments of grace in urban chaos. She talked about her dreams of opening a small gallery, about the difficulty of being a woman, trying to make it in a male-dominated creative industry in Thailand. She asked about his life with what seemed like genuine interest. Dean found himself opening up in ways he had not done in years, talking about his divorce, his strained relationship with his kids, the quiet panic of aging and feeling irrelevant. Now I want you to pause for a moment. Think about what I have just told you. Put this video on pause if you need to, and write in the comments what strikes you as suspicious or concerning about this situation so far. What would you do differently if you were Dean? Because I can tell you, when he was living it, nothing seemed wrong at all. Then Jarmus and Dean saw each other the next day, and the day after that. She showed him parts of Bangkok tourists never see. Small galleries in converted warehouses, local jazz clubs where musicians played until dawn. She took him to her favorite coffee shop, a cramped place run by an old Chinese couple, where she claimed they made the best Vietnamese coffee in the city. They laughed easily together. Their conversations flowed without awkwardness. Dean felt something he had not experienced since his early 30s. A genuine connection. A sense that someone actually saw him as more than just a successful but boring middle-aged businessman. But there were moments, looking back, that should have registered as red flags. The way Benjamus always insisted on paying for things, claiming Thai hospitality demanded it, even when Dean tried to cover the bill. How she casually mentioned her mother was sick and medical bills in Thailand were expensive, though she quickly changed the subject when Dean offered help. The fact that she never invited him to her apartment, always suggesting they meet in public spaces or his hotel, and the way she steered their conversations toward his financial stability, asking innocent-seeming questions about his business, his investments, his properties back in Canada. Dean noticed none of this, or if he did, he rationalized it away. He was not some naive teenager. He knew what he was doing. This was just a vacation romance, a pleasant distraction, no strings attached. Except the strings were already being woven around him, invisible and strong. On their 5th day together, Benjamus mentioned her studio. She had recently rented a small space in an older building near Chinatown, she said, where she was trying to establish a more professional photography business. She had been doing mostly outdoor work, but wanted to expand into studio portraits, fashion photography, commercial work. Would Dean like to see it? Maybe even do a professional photo shoot? She promised it would not be awkward or boring. She would capture him authentically, she said, with that smile of hers. Something he could show his kids, proof that their old man still had some life in him. Dean agreed immediately. The idea appealed to his vanity, sure, but more than that, he wanted to support her dream. He wanted to be helpful. He wanted to matter to someone again, even if just as a subject for an aspiring photographer's portfolio. The studio was in exactly the kind of building Benjamas had described. 5 stories, old Bangkok architecture mixed with hasty modern renovations, tucked down a side street where tourists rarely ventured. They climbed narrow stairs to the 3rd floor. The studio itself was modest, but professional-looking. White walls, photography lights, backdrops, various cameras and equipment scattered around.
There was even a small waiting area with a worn leather couch and a coffee table stacked with photography magazines. A young woman was there when they arrived, cleaning lenses at a small desk. Benjamin introduced her as Ploy, her assistant. Ploy barely looked up, gave a slight nod, and continued her work. Dean felt oddly reassured by her presence. This was a real business. There were other people involved. Nothing strange about any of this. The photo shoot started normally enough. Benjamin positioned Dean near a window, adjusted the lighting, gave him directions on where to look, how to stand. She was professional, encouraging, making jokes to help him relax. They did several outfit changes. Casual shots in his everyday clothes, more formal shots in the dress shirt and slacks he had worn to his business meetings. The whole session lasted maybe 2 hours. Dean actually enjoyed himself. When was the last time someone had focused so intently on him, studied his face, tried to capture something essential about who he was? Toward the end, Benjamin suggested a more casual final set. She brought out some whiskey, poured 2 glasses, said she wanted to capture something more intimate, more real. The lighting shifted. The mood changed. Dean remembered feeling pleasantly buzzed, relaxed, content. Ploy had left at some point. It was just the 2 of them now. Benjamin kept shooting, moving around him, changing angles. At one moment, Dean remembered, there was a knock at the door. Benjamin answered it, briefly, exchanged a few words in rapid time with someone in the hallway, then returned. No big deal. Just a neighbor complaining about something. The session ended. Benjamin said she would edit the photos over the next few days and sent him the best ones via email before he left Bangkok. Dean thanked her, hugged her goodbye, feeling warm and appreciated, and foolishly, dangerously hopeful about whatever this connection was between them. He left Thailand 4 days later, his mind already planning a return trip. Benjamin had kissed him goodbye at the airport, promised to stay in touch, made him promise to come back soon. Dean flew home to Vancouver, feeling lighter than he had in years. He told himself not to be ridiculous. He was a grown man. This was just a pleasant interlude. But he could not stop thinking about her smile, her laugh, the way she made him feel seen. The photos arrived in his email 3 weeks later. There were dozens of them. Beautiful, professional shots that captured him in ways he had not thought possible. He looked distinguished in some, relaxed in others, almost handsome in a few. He immediately sent copies to his daughter, who responded with a surprised but pleased message about how good he looked. Dean felt vindicated. This had been worth it. But there were also 3 photos at the end of the attachment that Dean did not recognize, photos he certainly did not remember being taken. In them, he appeared to be on that same leather couch in the studio waiting area, and there was a girl with him. A young girl, too young, impossibly young. The images were slightly blurred, clearly taken from a hidden angle, but the implications were devastatingly clear. Dean looked drunk or drugged in the photos, his expression unfocused. The girl looked uncomfortable, almost frightened, and the positioning, the way the shots were framed, suggested something horrific had happened, or was about to happen. Dean stared at his computer screen, his blood turning to ice water. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was impossible. This had not happened. He had never seen this girl. He would never, could never, would rather die than do what these photos suggested. They were fake. They had to be fake, photoshopped, fabricated, some kind of sick mistake. His phone rang 30 minutes later. Unknown international number. Dean answered with shaking hands. The voice on the other end was male, speaking English with a thick Thai accent. He addressed Dean by his full name, knew his home address,
knew his business address, knew his children's names. And then he explained the situation, with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. The photos were insurance, he said. Protection. Dean had enjoyed his time with Benjamis, had he not? Well, that time came with a cost. $100,000 to be precise, transferred to a specified account within 72 hours. If Dean failed to comply, the photos would be sent to the Royal Thai Police, to Dean's business partners, to his children, to every contact in his email address book. They would be posted on social media with his name and face clearly visible. Dean's life as he knew it would end. He would become an international pariah. He would face criminal charges in Thailand, extradition, prison, destroy everything he had built over a lifetime. All because of 3 photographs. Now, before we continue with what happened next, I need you to subscribe to this channel if you have not already. But more importantly, I need you to leave a comment telling me about your own experiences, or the experiences of people you know. Have you or has anyone in your circle ever faced blackmail or manipulation when traveling abroad? How did they handle it? Because Dean's next decision would determine whether he survived this or not. And understanding how people respond to this kind of pressure might save someone's life one day. Write your thoughts in the comments below. Dean did not sleep that night. He could not eat. He paced his condo, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. He thought about going to the police. But what would he tell them? He had voluntarily gone to that studio. He had drunk the whiskey. His fingerprints and DNA were probably everywhere. The photos looked real enough that any investigation would assume guilt before innocence. He thought about ignoring the threat. But the caller had known too much about him, had clearly done research, had probably done this to others before. He thought about paying, but $100,000 was not a small amount, even for him. And what guarantee did he have that this would not become an endless extortion scheme? He called Benjamis. Her number went straight to voicemail. He tried repeatedly over the next 12 hours. Nothing. Her social media accounts had disappeared. Her email bounced back. It was as if she had never existed at all. Dean realized with sickening clarity that he had been played from the very beginning. The chance meeting by the river, the instant connection, the shared interests and deep conversations. All of it had been scripted, rehearsed, executed with the precision of people who had perfected this particular con. Benjamis was not a photographer pursuing her dreams. She was a skilled operator, working for an organized criminal network that specialized in exactly this kind of trap. And Dean had walked into it with his eyes wide open, led by loneliness and vanity and the desperate need to feel important to someone. The deadline was 60 hours away now. Dean spent that time doing research, trying to find information about similar scams in Thailand. He found dozens of stories. Men, mostly middle-aged Western men, who had been lured, compromised, and blackmailed. Some had paid and disappeared into debt and shame. Some had gone to the police and faced humiliating investigations that went nowhere. A few had killed themselves. Dean read their stories with a growing sense of horror and recognition. He was not special. He was not unique. He was just another mark, another victim in an assembly line of exploitation. But Dean had not survived 3 decades in commercial real estate by giving up when things got difficult. He had negotiated with difficult clients, fought off hostile takeovers, rebuilt from financial setbacks. He knew how to think strategically under pressure. And as the hours ticked down, something hardened inside him. He would not let these people destroy him.
He would not give them $1 of his money. He would fight back, even if it meant risking everything. He started by hiring a private investigator who specialized in international fraud cases, an ex-cop named Marcus Chen, who worked out of Hong Kong and had contacts throughout Southeast Asia. Dean paid Chen $10,000 up front and laid out everything that had happened. Chen listened without judgment, then told Dean something that changed everything. This was not just about him, Chen explained. This was a sophisticated operation, run by a network with connections to organized crime, corrupt police officers, and even some government officials. They targeted lonely foreign men, used attractive operatives like Benjamins to build trust and affection, then created compromising situations using hidden cameras, drugs, or in some cases, real minors who were themselves being exploited. The victims almost never went to the police because the shame was too great, and the legal systems in these countries were often compromised. The networks made millions every year. They operated with near impunity. But Chen had been tracking one particular group for 18 months, and based on Dean's description of the studio location and Benjamin's appearance, he believed Dean had been targeted by the same crew. They had a pattern. They had vulnerabilities, and Chen thought, with the right leverage, Dean might be able to turn the tables. The plan was risky and probably illegal in multiple jurisdictions, but Dean was past caring about legal niceties. Chen sent one of his associates, a Thai woman named Nok, who worked as a freelance investigative journalist, to the studio location with hidden cameras. She posed as a potential client interested in booking photography services. The studio was still operating. Benjamas was not there, but Ploy was, and Ploy was surprisingly talkative once Nok started asking the right questions and offering the right incentives. Ploy was 19 years old and deeply in debt to the people who ran the operation. She had started as a genuine photography assistant, then been gradually coerced into helping with the blackmail schemes under threat of violence and exposure of her own family's legal troubles. She hated what she was doing, but saw no way out. When Nok suggested there might be a way to escape if Ploy cooperated, the girl broke down and agreed to provide information. Through Ploy, Chen learned the structure of the operation. There were 5 women like Benjamin's working in Bangkok alone, each with their own target profiles and hunting grounds. The photos and videos were edited by a team of specialists who could create incredibly convincing fake images if needed, though they preferred to use real situations because those held up better under scrutiny. The money went up a chain to a mid-level crime boss who had connections to trafficking rings, drug operations, and various other illegal enterprises. The police were paid off. Witnesses disappeared. Victims who fought back usually lost. But the operation had one weak point. The edited photos and videos were stored on a central server that the technical team accessed remotely. If someone could gain access to that server, they could prove the systematic nature of the fraud, identify other victims, and potentially expose the entire network. Chen knew a hacker in Manila who could possibly break in, but they needed physical access to one of the operational computers to install the necessary backdoor software. Dean made a decision that probably saved his life, but could have easily ended it. With 16 hours left before the deadline, he flew back to Bangkok. He did not tell anyone except Chen where he was going. He took a bag with $50,000 in cash, money he had withdrawn from multiple accounts and converted through various exchanges to avoid detection. He checked into a different hotel, dyed his hair gray at the temples to change his appearance slightly, and waited for Chen's instructions. The plan was insane. Ploy would set up a meeting with her handlers, claiming a new high-value target wanted to negotiate directly. Dean would pose as that target, Someone with enough money and connections to be worth talking to face to face. Once in the room, Dean would negotiate while Chen's hacker associate, a brilliant 23-year-old named Jun, would remotely access any devices in the room and install the backdoor software. They would get what they needed, walk out, and then release everything to international media outlets and law enforcement agencies in multiple countries simultaneously, making it impossible for the operation to survive, even with corrupt local protection. It almost worked. The meeting happened in a private room at a mid-range hotel in the Prompong district. Dean walked in with his bag of cash and faced 3 men. None of them looked like stereotypical criminals. They wore expensive casual clothes and spoke excellent English. The leader, who introduced himself only as Mr. Kit, smiled pleasantly and offered Dean tea. Dean played his role perfectly. He explained that he was a businessman who understood how the world worked. He appreciated their professionalism. He was willing to pay, but he wanted assurances. He wanted to know how many other victims were in their system. He wanted to understand the scope of their operation. He asked questions designed to keep them talking, while Jun worked remotely to breach their devices. For 20 minutes, it seemed to be working. Mr. Kit, flattered by Dean's interest and apparently convinced by his submissive attitude, started bragging about the sophistication of their operation. He explained how they selected targets, how they trained their operatives, how they maintained their networks. He showed Dean on his tablet examples of other successful operations. Other men, other photos, other destroyed lives, all compiled like a portfolio of human misery. Then Mr. Kit's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His expression changed instantly from pleasant business associate to something cold and reptilian. He said something sharp in Thai to the other 2 men, who immediately stood and moved to block the door. They had detected Jun's hack attempt. They knew what Dean was trying to do. What happened next is still confused in Dean's memory. One of the men grabbed him. Dean fought back, surprising himself with his own violence. The bag of cash scattered across the floor. Someone shouted. Dean remembered breaking free, running for the door, shouldering past the guard and sprinting down the hotel corridor. Behind him, he could hear them pursuing. He made it to the stairs, took them 3 at a time, burst out into the hotel lobby where confused guests and staff watched him run past like a madman. He had parked Chen's rental car in the underground garage, engine running. Chen in the driver's seat waiting for exactly this possibility. Dean dove into the back seat and screamed for Chen to drive. They peeled out, nearly hitting a pedestrian, and merged into Bangkok's insane traffic. Dean looked back and saw 2 of the men emerging from the hotel, looking around frantically. But in the sea of cars and motorcycles and tuk-tuks, they were already lost. Chen drove them to a safe house in a suburb called Montaburi, a nondescript apartment where they could hide while deciding next moves. Dean's hands would not stop shaking. He had just assaulted people, fled a crime scene, and probably made himself a target for retribution. But Jun told them the hack had partially worked. They had gotten into the system long enough to copy a significant amount of data before being detected. Not everything, but enough. Names, photos, financial records, communications logs, evidence of dozens of victims and multiple operations across several countries. The question now was what to do with it. Going to Thai police was pointless and potentially dangerous. The local media might be bought off or intimidated. But Chen had contacts with international investigative journalists, people who specialized in exposing transnational crime, who had protection from major news organizations. He could get the data to them anonymously. They could publish it in a way that would trigger investigations in multiple countries simultaneously. But there would be consequences. The criminal network would know it was Dean. They would want revenge. Dean would have to disappear for a while, maybe permanently leave Southeast Asia, possibly even relocate within Canada under a new identity if the threat was serious enough. Dean made the call. Release everything. Burn it all down. He had nothing left to lose except his dignity and his life. And if he was going to lose those anyway, he might as well try to save someone else from going through what he had experienced. Jen sent the data package to 3 different journalists that night. Within 48 hours, the story broke simultaneously in major newspapers across Europe, North America, and Asia. The details were shocking. Dozens of victims, millions of dollars extorted, connections to sex trafficking, drug smuggling, and official corruption. Photos and videos and financial trails that made the scope of the operation undeniable. The Thai government, embarrassed by the international attention, was forced to act. Raids happened. Arrests were made, though mostly low-level operatives. Ploy was offered protection in exchange for her testimony. Some of the higher-ups disappeared, probably fled to neighboring countries where they had connections. Benjamas was never found. Mr. Kit was arrested, but released within days on technicalities, though his operations were severely disrupted. Dean never got his $100,000 back. The money he had brought to the meeting was lost. He spent another $30,000 on lawyers, investigators, and security measures. But the photos, the leverage they had held over him, became meaningless once the story was public. Everyone knew about the scam now. The shame was still there, but it was shared among so many victims that it lost its individual power to destroy. Dean returned to Vancouver 6 months later. He looked like he had aged a decade. The confident, slightly vain businessman I had known was gone, replaced by someone quieter, more careful, more aware of his own vulnerability. He sold his company, downsized to a smaller condo, started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. His daughter reached out after reading about the story online, put together the pieces, realized her father had been one of the unnamed victims in the reports. They had their first real conversation in years. His son called from Toronto, awkward but concerned. Dean told them everything, sparing no details, laying bare his loneliness and his mistakes, and his desperation to feel wanted. It was the most honest he had ever been with his children. And somehow, that honesty began to rebuild what years of distance had damaged. Dean started volunteering with an organization that helped fraud victims cope with the psychological aftermath of scams and blackmail. He shared his story publicly, using his real name, destroying any remaining power the shame had over him. He became surprisingly good at it, helping other men understand they were not weak or stupid for falling for sophisticated manipulation. That loneliness makes all of us vulnerable. That there is no shame in needing connection. And then, almost 2 years after the Bangkok nightmare, something unexpected happened. Dean was giving a talk at a community center in Surrey about financial fraud prevention when a woman approached him afterward. Her name was Eleanor. She was 52, a recently widowed accountant who had lost her husband to cancer and was trying to figure out how to be a person again instead of just a caregiver and mourner. She had read about Dean's case in the newspaper, had been moved by his willingness to speak publicly about such a humiliating experience. She wanted to tell him she thought he was brave. They got coffee, then dinner, then more dinners. Eleanor was nothing like Benjama. She was quiet where Benjama had been energetic, practical where Benjama had been romantic, grounded in reality where Benjama had been a carefully constructed fantasy. With Eleanor, everything was slower, more honest, less intoxicating but more real.
They talked about grief and survival, and the strange way trauma can strip away pretense and force you to be genuine. They helped each other heal, not through grand gestures or passionate speeches, but through simply being present for each other's worst days. Dean married Eleanor 14 months later. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends, at a winery in the Okanagan Valley. His kids were there, and they actually seemed happy for him, not just going through the motions. During his toast, Dean talked about how sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what actually matters. How sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the doorway to the best thing. How he would not erase the Bangkok experience, even if he could, because without it, he would never have been broken enough to let Eleanor in. Now, I want you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel if this story resonated with you. If you understand that human vulnerability is not weakness, that we all make mistakes, that redemption is possible even from the darkest places. Leave a comment below telling me what you think about Dean's journey, or share if you or someone you know has gone through something similar and found a way forward. Your stories matter. Your experiences can help someone else who is struggling right now. I see Dean occasionally, usually at that same luxury rooftop restaurant where he first told me this story. Though now Eleanor comes with him. They hold hands across the table like teenagers, and Dean has this lightness about him that was never there before. Even before Bangkok, even before the divorce. He told me recently that he would not call himself happy exactly, but he feels present in his life in a way he never did before. He feels real. The criminal network that targeted him still exists, though in fractured, smaller forms. New operations start up all the time. Lonely people keep getting targeted, manipulated, destroyed. The basic human need for connection keeps being weaponized by people who understand exactly how to exploit that need. Dean knows he cannot save everyone, but he keeps telling his story, keeps working with victim support organizations, keeps trying to shine light into those dark corners where predators hunt. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this: your loneliness is not a weakness. Your need for connection is not something to be ashamed of. But please, please be careful who you trust when you are vulnerable. Not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. Not every connection is genuine. Take your time. Bring friends. Trust your instincts when something feels off, even slightly off, even if you cannot articulate exactly why. And if you ever find yourself trapped in a situation like Dean's, where shame and fear are being used to control you, remember that the power those feelings have over you depends on keeping them secret. The moment you shine light on them, the moment you refuse to be controlled by the fear of exposure, that is when you take your power back. It will not be easy. It will not be painless, but it is possible to survive, to rebuild, to find meaning and even joy on the other side of destruction. Dean would want you to know that. He would want you to know that if he could make it through, so can you. And now, before you go, I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because these stories need to be told, and these lessons need to be shared. Second, leave a comment telling me what struck you most about Dean's story, or share your own experiences with manipulation and recovery. Your words might save someone's life. And third, keep watching for more stories like this one.
because understanding how these things happen is the first step in preventing them from happening to you or to someone you love. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay aware, and never forget that you are stronger than you think, even in your most vulnerable moments.